Something funky is going on with my microphone. I don't know. Oh, sorry. Hold on. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to my nightmare. Something funny is going on with my microphone. I don't know if I am too far away from it. I don't know what's happening with it, but it's being very quiet. I thought, so here's the thing. I opted to spend New Year's Eve alone. As you're seeing this, it's March, I think. Maybe May, I don't know. But I decided I was going to just have a quiet New Year's and just spend it by myself. And then I was like, I don't have to technically spend it by myself. I can spend it with you by reading you the final book that is included in my Quaint City anthology. There are 5 books in total. This particular tome has 3 of them. So 3 books are in here, and the other 2 are ebooks currently. I would like to do another like hard copy with those 2 in it, especially because those 2 specifically focus kind of on one aspect of the friend group. So I think that in the new year I will probably do a second one of these books. But this has 3 in them. 3 of my novels are in here, so you can see how very short they are. And we're going to read the last one, which is Vane Attraction. Now, Vane Attraction is very special to me. It features a super personal story that I used as inspiration for this character's catalyst, I guess. There is a video on my playlist called, I think, The Time I Discovered My Grandfather Died on Social Media. So that's kind of the premise. And it's about a hair salon. We all know that I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm a licensed cosmetologist. I used to work in hair salons. So writing a hair salon romance between 2 women it was really cool. And instead of like specifically a non-binary person, Hannah kind of identifies as more of a butch person. And I love Hannah and Vane together. They are 2 of my favorite characters as a couple. Denver, I think, is my favorite character I've written. Frankie and Tate are my self-insert characters. And then we have Vane and Hannah, and those 2 are just adorable. If you like people who wear sunglasses and you like small, round, fluffy people, I think you're going to like this book. I know how to write one thing, guys. One thing. Anyway, it also features a real story about one of the times that I might have messed up someone's hair, and it was a friend of mine. So Bernadette, baby, this one's for you. As always, we're going to read the front matter, and then we're going to start on chapter 1. We'll just see how it goes. If I find something that's too spicy, I will absolutely stop reading that part and skip to the next non-spicy part. So if you would like the fully spiced version, please make sure to check out Amazon and get this book, or get the ebooks, whichever you prefer. I would love to see more of my books in other people's hands. Okay? So we're going to read Vane Attraction in the Quaint City series. Individually, these ebooks were dedicated to my mother and grandmother, Megan Gann and Bernadette, whose bangs I really did cut a hole in one afternoon at the salon where I worked. In addition to these beautiful humans who have supported me, this author would also like to acknowledge the beta reading and light editing skills of the following individuals: Megan Gann, she, her; Jen Robinson, she, they; Allegra D'Ambruso, she, her; and the Prophet Loki Discord, they, them. Vane Attraction. Chapter 1. By the way, I've decided since chapter 1 and 2 are kind of long, we're going to split them into their own videos, okay? For all that Vane was known to be the biggest bitch in Quaint City, she wasn't typically prone to acts of violence against other people. But right now, she could cheerfully choke her aunt with the handcrafted pumpkin latte from Devil's Stomping Grounds. Said latte was currently sitting in the cup holder of the shitty car she'd been driving since college, entirely untouched and getting colder by the minute. Under normal circumstances, autumn was Vane's favorite time to be in Quaint City. The sweet little tourist trap where she'd set up shop was particularly adorable, as the trees that lined the main street all started turning orange, and that perfect golden light was starting to stream through the front windows of her salon. Autumn light might not be the best for photographing blonde clients who wanted no warmth in their hair, but luckily, autumn also brought hordes of, "Please make me brunette, I'm tired of summer highlights." Maryland was known for its oppressively humid air, which made you feel damp. Ooh, that is a good typo. Hold on. Damp whenever you set foot outside in the summer, and it always took until the end of September for everything to cool off. But once it did, there was an undefinable magical quality to the air that seemed to imply anything was possible. Sadly, anything was a broad category, and it didn't always mean good. Gran was dead. Vane slammed her hands against the steering wheel of her car, grinding her teeth together in a way that would probably trigger one of her migraines. She could be such a cunt and 3/4 when she had a migraine. Her eyes pricked with tears. She didn't want to cry. It had taken her exactly 45 minutes to get her makeup perfect for her shift at the salon. Her salon. She would absolutely not cry. To cry in the parking lot behind her salon would be humiliating and show a complete lack of self-control and be an utterly grotesque waste of product. She would not cry. Gran was dead, though. It shouldn't hurt this much. America, capitalist piece of shit country that it is, seemed to believe there was no real importance in your grandparent dying. Corporate jobs give you 1 day off if you're lucky and definitely do not include any kind of pay. Vane had been in salons where a stylist had lost a parent, and the manager was offended when the person had asked for more than 1 day to grieve. In theory, owning her own salon should make Vane more sympathetic to herself. It's not every day you find out the person who took you in when your parents didn't care enough to keep you died on fucking social media. But Vane was tough. She'd made it to almost 40 without having to deal with any of these squishy feelings. If successful corporations could be that cold, then Vane should be able to cut this feeling off at the throat, to push it back into the dark recesses of her heartless chest. But she just couldn't. She couldn't stop the choking, biting, cringing sadness that was threatening to wreck her perfectly painted face. She let out a dry sob. Cancer was a bitch. Vane should have gone to see her more often. She should have spent more time with her, but Vane was busy trying to take care of herself while also trying to make Gran proud. When her aunt would call to update her, Vane would just push it off until the next week. Soon, she'd promise. I'll come see you soon, okay? But then there was payroll to do, or accounting to keep up with, or advertising for the salon to consider and plan. She'd pushed off visiting, or kept her visit short. And then lockdown had happened, and she'd basically been forbidden from coming over anyway. Her Aunt Tammy had been quiet, but Vane was so busy trying to navigate this shitstorm of a virus and keep her doors open that if she were being honest with herself, she'd never even noticed the lack of communication. She'd been cut off enough that Tammy hadn't even called when Gran died. Vane found out on social media. Vane slammed her hands onto the wheel again for good measure. She was the type of stylist who was perpetually late, but she'd been recently inspired to start showing up on time for her shifts. It definitely had nothing to do with the warm, talented new girl that had started a few months ago, who was quickly worming her little way into Vane's chest, right where her heart was supposed to be. So what if Vane had started getting to the salon early to sit in the parking lot and think about what she was going to say to Hannah when she saw her? What if she sometimes braved the lines of people waiting for coffee at Devil's Stomping Grounds just to take Hannah a cocoa and see her smile? Vane was definitely not smitten. And up until very recently, she'd had a boyfriend, Ross. What a loser. Vane was trying to be a good business owner, and like any good business owner with a few free minutes in her car, She'd just finished uploading a picture of that gorgeous balayage, white highlights melting down from a dark root, to the shop's social page, only to see the post from her aunt. It was marked 2 weeks ago. Gran had died 2 weeks ago, and no one had bothered to call her. And she'd missed the funeral. Anger bubbled up in her chest, overwhelming her grief, overwhelming the grief that also lurked there, but not enough to choke out the guilt that she should have tried harder. With glassy eyes, Vane leaned her leather-clad elbow onto the windowsill of her car and remembered Gran. Funny, wonderful Gran, who had taken her in after her parents kicked her out when they'd found her wrapped around Molly, the head cheerleader at her school. Gran, who had given her a place to live while she finished high school and the 1,500-hour tech program that ended in her getting her cosmetology license. Gran, who had advised her while she worked for some of the worst jerks in the industry until she had enough to get her shitty car, her shitty apartment, and then her beautiful salon. In that order. A loud inward gasp of air from her own lungs surprised her enough to snap her out of it. No. She couldn't possibly think of that now. Not when she was due in for her shift and clients were waiting. Vane tilted her head back and stared at the hole-riddled upholstery of her ratty old car. The fabric was tearing away, exposing the foam and metal underneath. She blinked back the tears that threatened to spill over and breathed in and out to calm herself down. She should really replace this stupid thing, she thought. Her salon, her image, all relied on cohesive branding. Expensive, rebellious, and tasteful. That was Vane. Stylish, edgy. Vane's car didn't fit the image. Every cent she earned was poured back into the salon, leaving her with very little time or energy for herself. Or Gran, if she wanted to be a bitch to herself about it. She breathed out, letting a big whoosh of air escape her. She couldn't go into the salon like this. She couldn't face Bex and Hannah like this. She breathed in, sucking back a sob and forcing herself to be calm, and then whooshed out again. In and out, one foot in front of the other. She could get through today. Vane grabbed her keys and her black leather tote bag and stepped out of her car, and immediately tripped. She made the mistake of catching herself with her hands, which sent her purse spilling onto the ground. "Are you okay?" Vane's head snapped up. Hannah was above her, with the back door of the salon propped open with a brick. She was wringing her hands together in worry before she bent down and started to pick up Vane's stuff off of the ground. Her soft hand had just wrapped around Vane's cracked screen phone when she made a little O sound. She gathered Vane's hands in her own and frowned. "Oh no, you're not okay." Vane looked down. She swallowed. Her palms were cracked, scraped and bleeding, with little bits of gravel stuck to them. She swallowed again because that stupid lump in her throat was refusing to go down. "I'm fine." "Samantha, you're not fine." Vane tried to cringe away from her, fingers curled in towards her wound. But Hannah's grasp was too strong, and she was trapped by those talented hands. "Vane," Hannah sighed. "Samantha Vane, you're not fine." Vane winced at her whole name being used. "I'll wear gloves today. It'll be fine. Why are you outside? Where's your mask?" "Smoke break?" Hannah asked. And Vane pursed her lips, letting one perfectly blocked brow raise up in disbelief. Hannah deflated, as if Hannah would ever do something as tacky as smoke. "All right, I was, of course, using the mask indoors, but Bex is doing some sort of video on layering polish, and it's getting sort of toxic in there. It's such a nice day out, I thought maybe we should open the salon doors, and since my client is late anyway, I've been waiting outside, taking advantage." Hannah was adorable when she babbled, and she babbled when she was nervous, which was often. A blush was spreading over her round cheeks. Vane licked her lips. This time, when she pulled back, Hannah let her take her hands. It was a beautiful day. It was a perfect fall day in quaint fucking city. There was a cool breeze and the warm sunshine and beautiful yellow and orange leaves on the trees. It was a perfect day, and her grandmother was dead, and her life was spilled out on the pavement of the sidewalk. Fan-fucking-tastic. Tell Bex she's only supposed to do toxic videos during closed hours. She needs to knock it off, Vane told her. She cleared her throat. Let me get my stuff and I'll be in. Hannah seemed to know better than to argue, and Vane wondered if she'd been out there long enough to see her banging her fists against the wheel. Or it could be Scott's influence. Hannah had come to Vane from a rival salon that gaslit its employees and worked them all hours of the night and day. The owner, Scott Christian, could be entirely charming one minute and then, with choice words, eviscerate his assistants, while all the other clients and clients and stylists watched in abject horror. It's because I noticed there should be a comma there. I'm going to redo this. It's going to be so good. The job had left marks on Hannah that Vane was trying her best to undo. Hannah went inside to warn Bex about Vane's mood, and Vane gathered up her life from where it lay on the pavement. Vane was determined not to make a mess of herself or anyone else today. She picked up her phone, her case with her shears inside, and her planner, shoved them all back into her tote bag, and picked herself up off the ground. She could do this. Gran would be disappointed in anything less. As she entered the salon, Vane knew she absolutely could not do this. She held on for 3 clients. The first one was a standard full highlight, easy. She could do those in her sleep. While the highlight was processing, she didn't give herself time to think because she had a root touch-up on her favorite client, Bernadette, to apply while the highlight was working. She gave Bern a water and helped settle her in a chair by the large front window to wait while she finished the blowout and haircut from the first highlight. She had bills to pay, a salon to keep running, and Vane was certainly not going to give herself time to think about it. She also kept sneaking glances across the salon at Hannah. Hannah was everything Vane wasn't. She was chubby where Vane was a thin slash of a person. She was shorter where Vane was tall and she had long bleached out curls where Vane's own dark hair was a shorter shag. Every bisexual needs a mullet in a pandemic year, right? Where Vane was more inclined to frown or sulk, Hannah had a bright smile plastered on her face nearly all of the time. Probably because at her old job, she would have been fired without one. Poor thing. Today, more than once, she caught Hannah looking back at her. There was concern in her eyes and a constant question etching itself in the gentle lines between her eyebrows. Vane was fine. She'd even argued with Bex about the nail polish, right? Couldn't be anything less than fine. It all came to a head when, after a quick neck trim for a walk-in, Vane had blown out Bernadette's hair and was about to trim her bangs. Are you sure you're not going through something? Only people who are having mental collapses want bangs, Vane said to her as she sectioned off the front pieces of hair. Bernadette, the amazingly calm woman that she was, just shrugged. It's a pandemic year, Bern said. Go nuts. It'll grow back. Vane frowned, not that Bernadette could see her lips turned downward behind her black mask. Vane sighed. I hate bangs, she muttered. They're so easy to mess up, and they need constant trimming. I know I'm supposed to love bangs, because you'll just have to come back and let me cut them over and over, but they suck. There's money in bangs. Bangs suck. Bernadette kept her mouth shut and sucked on the straw of a melted iced coffee she'd gotten from Devil's during her processing time. It had been pretty funny watching the foil-headed woman with freshly painted toes, courtesy of Bex, splayed out with foam, toddling over to get a coffee. Vane had almost considered smiling. As Vane drew herself up into a straightened position, elbows out, scissors poised to make that first cut on Bern's bangs, Bern let go of the straw, blinked at her blinked her huge eyes at Vane and said, "Don't fuck it up." Vane had been in this industry 20 years, and she could count the number of complete fuck-ups she'd had on one hand. But there it was, a hole cut on the right side of Bernadette's fringe, mangling her haircut. "Oh, fuck," Vane said. Her grip on reality was already shaking, but now she'd messed up her favorite client's hair. It was crumbling at the core. "Oh, I'm so sorry." Bernadette waved her off. "It's not a problem. I screwed around and found out, hun. Don't worry about it." Vane's face was red, especially considering Hannah was looking at her with wide eyes, clearly traumatized by what she'd just witnessed. Okay, maybe traumatized was a bit dramatic, but Vane accepted nothing short of perfection from the work that Vane Attraction put out. And to have made such a rookie mistake. Was it time to go home yet? I should have said no. I'm clearly not in the mood for bangs today, Vane said. She put her shears to work, point cutting in to try and blend the mess that one quick chop across Bern's hair had done. "Yeah, I can tell," Bernadette replied. She watched Vane through her fringe with a curious gaze. "What's going on? You seem more tense than usual." "Ah, good." So Vane usually came across as tense, and now it was worse. Vane cringed, making sure to pause her scissors this time. "I usually seem tense?" Bern snorted. "Bitch, please. Are you joking? You're the epitome of tense. Intense, present tense, past tense. What's going on?" Vane's eyes flicked to Hannah again, who was busy rolling a disgusting smelling perm on a younger person with shaved sides. Hannah was so engrossed in her work that Vane felt she could be honest with Bernadette. She huffed, and then she spilled. "My grandmother died." Bernadette's eyes flew open wide, and she gasped, making Hannah's head snap up from the roller she'd just settled. "Oh man, I am so sorry." "Shh, shh," Vane hissed. She shook her head at Hannah, hoping she was conveying, "Just get back to work," without looking too bitchy. She swallowed. No, don't cry. If you cry, I'll cry, and I can't afford to cry, dude. I just need to get through today." "Okay, but you know I've been coming to you for a long time. You're more than a stylist to me." Bern reached out to grip Vane's arm. "We're friends. If you need me, I'm here for you." Vane nodded at Bernadette, and she resumed trying to fix the bangs. "Thanks, Bern." In the end, she couldn't let Bernadette pay for the absolute disaster of a haircut, and Bern protested. Of course, the final cut wasn't so bad, but it wasn't what Bernadette had wanted, and Vane was nothing if not a perfectionist, so she couldn't charge for it. "You can't do that," Bernadette objected. Vane waved her off. "I'm the owner," Vane said in a gravelly voice that was getting too thick with unshed tears. "I can do what I want. Sorry I screwed up your bangs." "Hey," Bern's voice dropped low and soft, even though she probably knew doing that would set Vane off again. "If you need me, you have my number. I'm here for you." Bernadette had lost her mother a few years ago, so Vane knew she would be more understanding than most. But she shook her head and said, I'll call you if I need you, but I'm fine. I'll be okay." Would she, though? "It's a beautiful day outside," Hannah said brightly. She was walking up to the register with her client in tow, eyes beaming happiness at Vane. "Of course she'll be okay." And apparently, that was the straw that would break Vane's back. She broke down and started to sob uncontrollably. Bernadette wrapped her up in a hug that smelled of bleach and hairspray, swaying her from side to side. "It's okay, girl. Let it all out," she murmured. "What's wrong with Vane?" Bex asked from somewhere. "I don't know," Hannah replied. Bernadette huffed against Vane's hair. "You want me to tell him?" Bern asked her. It was all she could do to shake her head. She started to pull away, but Bernadette held her tight. "It's all right, Vane. This is normal, sweetie." "I know," Vane wavered, "but not for me." This time she did pull up back and wiped her cheeks where the tears had fallen. She looked at her salon staff. "Death in the family. I'll be in my office." She turned and fled like the coward she was, leaving everyone standing up front staring at her. She slammed the office door. When she'd first moved into the retail space that held Vane Attraction, everything had been white and bland. She liked it because it was a blank canvas that she could shape and mold into something really cool, something different from the other salons she'd been to. And over the years, she'd made it her own, especially her office, because if she was going to have to spend time in there going over payroll and bills, she wanted it to feel like herself. She'd painted the walls a deep burgundy, and she'd thrifted so many funky, weird decorations, like the statue of an elephant dressed as the Virgin Mary, or the throne that was her desk chair. I forgot I wrote that part. It all came together in a creepy cool style that she was really proud of. Now she was collapsed in the gaudy gold chair, feeling her chest constrict tighter and tighter as she tried not to cry, breathing in and out too heavily for her own good. Hyperventilating? Was she hyperventilating? All she knew was that the mask was sticking to her face and she was going to rip it off in like 5 seconds, pandemic be damned. There was a gentle knock on the door. Vane? Fucking Hannah. Yes, she said, and she winced at how harsh she sounded. She really didn't want Hannah to think that she was as cruel as the last guy Hannah had worked for. She always swore if Scott Christian walked in front of her car, she needed a new car anyway. Hannah opened the door and peered around the panel at Vane. Her eyes held nothing but concern. Do you want me to call your other clients? I could ask them to move or cancel. We can handle it without you if you'd like to go home. Vane pinched the bridge of her nose and ground out, I don't need to go home. Oh, Hannah said softly. Her brows pulled together. Are you sure? What would I do at home? Cry? Vane pointed at her ruined face. I'm already doing that. Hannah rolled her eyes. Yes, I just thought you might not like to do it on your clients' heads. I'm not going to cry. The itching behind Vane's nose told her otherwise, but it's not like Hannah had to know that. I'll be fine. Vane's phone buzzed with a call. Without even looking at the caller ID, she swiped it open to answer. Vane! Hannah's brows furrowed in a frown type of way that suggested she wanted to continue the conversation. Vane waved a hand at her and she rolled her eyes, but at least she left the office and closed the door behind her. Hey, baby, said a masculine voice that had her groaning. At least the rage that burned inside her every time she heard her ex's voice was enough to push the grief aside for the time being. Ross, Vane hissed. Don't call me that. What do you want? What makes you think I want something? Don't you trust me? Ross said, his voice thick with a slimy, unasked question. He was probably short on cash. That was usually why he called. We broke up. I'm not giving you any money. Please stop calling before I file a protective order, Vane said as calmly as she could. It was not, in fact, very calm. Ross scoffed on the other end of the line. Vane, sweetheart, I miss you. I'm not calling with any, interior motive. It's ulterior, you jackass. Vane's teeth ground together hard enough that her ears felt it. She breathed in through her flared nostrils and then out again as slowly as she could. She'd broken up with him more than a week ago, although if she were honest, she'd been checked out of that relationship longer than that. Forget my number, Ross. Look, Vane, I'm the best. She didn't hear him. She hung up and blocked his number. Originally, she wasn't going to block him. It wasn't her style. Also, a life in the salon industry and pretty much fending for herself everywhere else had taught her that sometimes it's better to stay in touch with your enemies so that you could see what their next move was. But this was different. She wanted the cycle to be broken, and she couldn't do that if she kept accidentally answering his calls. She wanted to be free of his money requests, his backhanded compliments, and, she couldn't deny her feelings for Hannah. Wait, wasn't that a stage of this grief shit? Then yes. Yes, she could deny. Deny, deny, deny. With an angry huff, Vane straightened her mask and stood. She fucking had work to do. No time for anything else. Well, thank you for listening to Chapter 1. I hope you come back for Chapter 2. We did write this. I wrote this during a pandemic, and there is some editing I think I should probably do. But you hopefully have seen my KDP video. I think I talk about wanting to add, I have a really cute second part to that book that I'd like to add to it. That's from Hannah's perspective. So at least I think I didn't edit that part out of that video. Anyway, hopefully come back for the next part. If you like this video, please consider telling your friends, watching another video, making a comment, like, subscribe, notifications, you know the drill. And until next time, go outside, get a walk, get a snack, take a nap, take your meds, drink some water, because I know you have not. I'll see you next time. Bye.